Hey folks, it is Tuesday, October 4th. I'm back here today. And today we're going to be tuning up, or at least greasing on the old John Deere 4400 here. This combine hasn't really been featured on the channel much. We picked this up a couple of years ago and I kind of got real slow on making videos. So this year it'll be kind of nice to actually showcase this machine a little bit because it's I'm pretty happy with it. It's got a lot of improvements versus the old 55. Now, not that the 55 was bad in any way. In fact, it did a really good job for us and would continue to do a good job, I think. But the 4400 was just too good a deal. It came up for sale just a couple miles from our place. And it came with all the heads we needed, and we just couldn't pass it up. And it's a diesel engine, so it's more fuel efficient. Although it is a more complicated machine, so the 4400 is a little harder to work on and maintain than the 55 ever was. But for what it's worth, the 55, which we still have here, is for sale. I think you guys know it's been well cared for. Keep it in mind if you're in the market. Now, as for the 4400, my goal today is just go through and do the easy stuff. The header, as you can see, is on, but it's not all hooked up. So we need to bolt that into place. We need to hook up the drive shafts and the hydraulic hoses, which is no big deal. I'm gonna check fluid levels and make a note of anything that needs to be taken care of when we get it back home. Once we get it back to the farm, I'll change oil on it, and we have to put the straw chopper back on. And really, there's not too much after that. We did do some repairs on this. We've got a couple little things we fixed, including the fuel gauge. The fuel gauge wasn't working, and I said we can't have that because it's hard to... This isn't the kind of tank that you can just dip a rod into and see, you know, like a wooden dowel or something and see what the level of the fuel is. It's got kind of a kink in the filler neck, so I said we need to have a working fuel gauge in here. So we just put that in recently. All right. Now, of course, I suppose... Oh, it did start easy. I was going to say, I'm sure it won't go easy now since I actually have the camera set up properly. Murphy's Law. Probably should have had the proper sized wrench and not a crescent, but because we're away from home, I couldn't remember what size these were. So I just had to go with the adjustable option. Woo! Okay, that's not going anywhere. I think that's a required phrase. There we go. Okay. Bolts are in, drive shafts are hooked up. All right, these hydraulic hoses can be a little bit of a pain, especially with the head up in the air because it doesn't leave very much room under here. But we'll give it a whirl. Okay, it actually went real easy. Good. And then our two bigger guys here for the header. Make sure they're relatively grime-free. There's one. And the other. Okay, that actually was just fine. Not a big deal. All right, folks, today is the day. Bring the combine home from the neighbor's shed. I did do a little more maintenance on it yesterday, but it was so dark over there I had a hard time seeing what I was doing and had to kind of call it quits. And then today the rain that we were expecting has failed to materialize. It looks like it's staying well north of us. So then I said, well, let's pull the trigger, get the machine home. I'll finish the maintenance stuff that I needed to do on it in the farmyard where I'll be able to see with the daylight. And who knows, maybe we'll even take it in a bean field today. But we'll see. That's yet to be determined, and it depends on where we get to. We have quite a few little odds and ends to do on the machine yet. So I like to be thorough, especially with an older combine. I want to make sure that it's tuned up as well as you can get it, because a breakdown isn't a fun thing to deal with. All right, folks, combine's home. Now we got to do the process of tuning it all up. There's always a couple little odds and ends I want to fix too, things that we've run into in previous harvest sessions that you kind of say, oh wait, we got to take care of that before the next time. So one thing I just did on this, on these machines, you have the timing chain here for the cylinder speed. Comes off the primary counter shaft there, that primary counter shaft sheave, and then this is the cylinder speed control sheave. And then of course then that drives the cylinder itself, and it's all timed together. So there's this little bicycle chain system that they came up with. And way up here where that wood block is, that spacer block that keeps the chain tight, that chain had worn grooves in that block, and as such it wanted to try to jump off this pulley because the grooves were offset to one side a little bit. So I took that block off and flipped it around, and I just oiled that chain to make sure that it's going to stay pliable, flexible, that all the joints are going to articulate. So my next thing will be to get the oil draining. We haven't changed the oil in this since we got it. We used it last year. It had the previous owners had said it had a recent oil change, so we didn't bother with it. So we used it for oats and soybeans last year, and then we used it for oats this summer. I was going to change, oats and cereal rye. I was going to change the oil then, and then it was threatening to rain. I didn't want it to sit out in the rain because I was going to be tinkering with it. So we took it back to the shed, and now we have the oil in the filter. We're going to change oil on it, and then we'll know where we're at for engine hours and oil changes and all that. And the other one that's fun that I wanted to show you guys, I knew this was a thing. Let's see if I can get my butt up here while I'm holding the camera. I knew this was a thing, but I hadn't been into it yet. So you can see around the edges there, the previous owners spray foamed the cab. They also put, reflective foam on the roof and in the back there. They must have really been trying to seal it up. I know they harvested wheat with this, so they were running it in the summer, so I'm guessing they were trying to, keep the cab as airtight as possible for dust and for AC purposes. But the service cover here, where the seat is normally mounted, I took the seat off. That's kind of jammed up against the railing here next to me. And there's a couple of grease zerks in here that you need to get at periodically. They aren't super critical, but they're pivot points for the auger engagement lever system. Right there, you can see that moving a little bit. The pivot point for that has a grease zerk, and there's actually a zerk for the main separator control arm assembly too. It doesn't seem like it requires grease very often. I'm not even sure if the zerk works, but I'm going to grease those because I'm in here, and I wanted to open this up and see what I could see from this vantage point. For in the future when I need to do any work on the machine. I like to know everything inside and out because I usually do all the fixing. But I had a heck of a time getting this cover open because they spray foamed it so well in the back that they actually foamed around the hinges and stuff. So I'll give them an A for effort, but a B for oversight. So yeah, change the oil, finish greasing, change cylinder speed, fan speed, concave spacing, all that good stuff. Check the chaffers and sieves, make sure that we're in the right neighborhood for finger settings on those. And then, what was the other thing I was going to do? I had it. Oh, the emergency brake. So these machines, actually it's funny, the old 55 had way better brakes than this combine does. The brakes on this thing are real iffy. And that is after I went through last year and completely rebuilt them. I mean, it basically had no brakes on it when we brought it home, which was a fun ride down the road. And then the first year we used it, I used it for oats with basically no brakes at all on the machine, and that was scary. But I have a whole video series that I'm going to have to edit and put together of the complete teardown and rebuild of the brake system on this combine, because it's pretty interesting and might be useful to some people. And it was quite the job crawling around under the transmission. So out of that whole process, when I did that repair, the one thing I didn't do was I didn't tension up the emergency brake lever. I just didn't have time. So I can stop now, which is good, but I can't set the e-brake when I want to get out of the machine. So if I have to clear something in the field, I basically have to shut the combine completely down in gear and then get out if I'm not on perfectly flat ground. So that would be a good thing to get fixed. And then last but not least, we got to put the straw chopper on, which should really then be the end of it, that we should be ready to go after all that. These kinds of things are always awkward, because here's the drain hose, and here's my bucket that I've got resting on the main axle beam there. We're gonna need to do, something like that to keep the wind from blowing this everywhere. I gotta figure something out. This is one of the more sketchy things I've done. That is precarious, but it's working. Got all the oil drained out, had lunch while that was going on. The lunch bell rang, and I thought, perfect timing. So now we're replacing everything. Good old Rotella T4. You know, ever since I started watching the Vice Grip Garage YouTube channel, whenever I put this stuff in, all I can think of is that it's got all the proper vitamins and minerals for your engine that it needs. Dad's doing the wagon shuffle, getting them ready to go out to the field and dropping them off. How you doing, wagon man?
I'm the tire guy and I'm tired of it.
I would be too. It's exhausting.
Yes, it is. I can hardly get my breath. Even Olivia could probably do it. Might as well get her involved in the farm work.
Might as well. All right, guys, so I've been poking around here with little odds and ends that didn't need to be filmed. I'm just amazed at how much stuff is put together with little bicycle chains on these machines, where I was telling you about the variable speed cylinder sheaves are all controlled with little bicycle chains, including one under the seat that I needed to oil and tension up. But then when I was adjusting the concave spacing, the wheel in the cab was real jerky. So then I peeked around underneath and realized that that's run with a little bicycle chain too, which nobody ever maintained. So it got all locked up with some of the links frozen together in little jaggedy patterns, so then it can't be tensioned properly either. So I took the boot off the shifter and I could see it then, and I was able to spray a bunch of WD-40 on it and kind of ran it around the loop a few times, but it's still frozen. But I'll let that oil work on it for a while we're harvesting, basically. So I'm setting the cylinder speed right now, and I gotta say, this is one of the weirder designs. I'm supposed to do this wide open, but since I'm slowing things down, I figured, well, I'll just work down to the RPM I want. So with this little ratchet over here that kind of used to turn everything, turn the shafts that adjust the variable speed sheaves, and that's about a little under 550. That'll be a good starting point. See how it goes. So the other thing I like to do is double check things with a shaft tachometer. It's always nice to know that, you know, your gauges aren't lying to you and that everything's going at the right speed. We're at about 1,000 RPM there, a little under 1,000. That'd be fine. Yeah, I had to think about that. That was showing 550, so we're right on the money. The tachometer's right. Okay, I think I can confidently say that we're all ready to go here. Everything's adjusted, everything's set. Jaffers and sieves have been set. You can see we got the straw chopper on. Now that took pretty much all day. It's almost 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is supper time on the farm, so I anticipate somebody is going to be coming out the door to holler at me or ring the bell in just a minute here. It didn't need to take all day. I could have had this thing ready a lot quicker if I'd have just hit the critical stuff. You know, greased everything, changed the oil, changed the settings, and gone to work. But I took the time to address some issues that had been cropping up that I wanted to get fixed. And, you know, we try to make a list of things to do in the off season, but so often you get busy with everything else in the off season, because the off season for the combine is the on season for something else. So we're constantly addressing issues with whatever's at hand at the moment, whether that's hay baling or spring planting, or, you know, the ideal thing would be if we had a machine shed so that we could work on things in the wintertime. We just don't have that luxury right now, although we're thinking about it. It's on the future list here, and hopefully getting closer all the time. But until we have that shed, you know, we kind of have to just address stuff as it comes along, and that's what we did here today. So there's a number of little issues that I needed to resolve that are now taken care of, and the machine should be ready to go. I'm thinking right after supper I might eat really quickly, and then I might run out, and behind me here we've got the soybean field right by the driveway, and I might fire this thing up and just do one pass and check the moisture, make sure the beans are at a good level, and then we will plan on hitting it as soon as possible tomorrow, once the dew is off everything. The other thing is we don't have to feel too much pressure, because it only takes us two and a half days if we're just taking our time to get the beans harvested. We have 24 acres of beans this year. It's not a lot. So, and I actually need to save some for Friday, because someone's coming out with a drone on Friday to do some filming. I don't know how well that's going to go. It's supposed to be cold and windy. So, yeah, we'll see. But that would be pretty cool to be able to have some drone footage of combining. On that note, I'm going to eat supper, and then we'll maybe take a swing at it here. All right, guys, I think I got you set up here with a good view. We're going to start out kind of nice and slow. Let's see what we can do here. The moisture tester here. And we got a little something in there so we can test. Looks like our chaff is spread out nice, which is good. What we got? Shuffle around in the residue. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Actually, that looks pretty nice. Things all seem threshed out. I don't see any full pods. Yeah, no beans, no full pods. It's a good sign. Holy grasshoppers, Batman. That's been the case all year. It was the same way with the rye. I think half my hopper was grasshoppers at that time. Hopper, grasshoppers, hopper, grasshoppers. No, couldn't be. Couldn't be a correlation. Yeah, they're ready. Well, at 9.2, I'd say we waited a little too long to get started on this, but that's life. I had other things going on, and at least they're going to thresh out well. So with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow for what is hopefully an action-packed day of harvesting.